curious, yeah, indeed, about the Swedish people. They think if they recognize it.
My own perception of Swedes in general is that we don't have as much relation to religion at all, really.
Yeah.
Many of us, I think.
Yeah.
And that changes the perspective a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But I somehow interpreted this movie that in a way that Anton's relation to his family and to death and things like that is intimately connected somehow, indirectly maybe, to religion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's only the way I understand it, but
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. So that is totally true. But I think it's also what you're seeing: silence, melancholia, you know, death. But I think he also knows it of himself, and he also tries to get away from that, you know. But I think his strongest work is when he was very much reacting on you know, on his family, maybe as a rebellion or whatever. But I think especially in the 80s and the, you know, the death being part of his work, I thought it was a very strong period of his work, actually. So sometimes you want to change, but sometimes it's a pity to leave something behind you, which is very, you know, which is very much part of your strength. But anyway.
Do we have one more Swedish opinion?
Actually, it's just a small question. You mentioned that he works a lot with famous people. Does he also work with unestablished artists, kind of upcoming people, or somebody who is a question mark?
No, well, he's making a series now of painters, as you saw, but they are all extremely established. You know, Richter and Kiefer and all the really world-famous artists. And I asked him that question, you know, why don't you shoot somebody, you know, next door? And but it didn't end up in the film because he couldn't really explain why. But I think you know, it's I don't know, it's a question actually for him, and I asked him that, and it didn't really have a, you know, interesting answer. But I think it's also because people expect it from him, you know, that there are always extremely famous people in his work. So I think it's also, you know, what he wants to give his audience, maybe, or I don't know, or maybe he just respects, you know, the established painters more than the, you know, just upcoming. But that's a very good question for him. I'll ask him again next time.
I have two questions, actually. You mentioned there was another film that somebody was making about him. What happened to that? And also, what happened to him physically? Because something, it seemed he said he couldn't.
Yeah, kind of burnout. Well, he took some rest for about 4 months. It were his lungs that basically, you know, didn't work properly, and but now he's completely up and running again, and he's totally, you know, and he's working on a film in Germany, and I think he makes, you know, he works 24 hours a day, and so he's completely back in his normal schedule. And then the other question was about the other film. It was an Australian film. I've never seen it. I know that it came out. It didn't really, you know, it wasn't reviewed very well. It was just, you know, it was a little bit like an advertisement for him. You had all these famous people telling, you know, how fantastic he was, and that was it. You know, there was never. But you know, I don't know what's happening with that film. I didn't follow it.
I just wondered if it got made.
Yeah, it got made, but I don't know where it ended up.
Okay, thank you for being here
Yeah.
with us.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and